Imagine for a moment. You're standing in a silent room, empty of noise yet filled with presence. It's not just quiet, it's expectant, as though life itself is holding its breath, waiting on you. Not waiting to rescue you, fix you, or judge you, but to respond to your word. As Emmet Fox once taught, the word is the most powerful agency in the universe. Not just the physical sound that passes through your lips, but the inner decree, what you know to be true when you speak with conviction. That is the word. And the moment you speak it with clarity, belief, and alignment, the universe begins to reorganize itself to reflect it. So before we journey inward, I invite you to like and subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with your soul. You must understand this. The word is not mere language, it is law in action. The spoken word is the precision tool through which spirit shapes matter. Every time you affirm a truth, whether consciously or not, you are setting spiritual machinery into motion. There is no neutral speaking. Every word is a command, whether it builds or destroys. And every command is obeyed not by some distant deity, but by the infinite, impersonal power of the creative mind. You speak the word each time you declare something as real. I am strong. I can't catch a break. It's hopeless. Things always work out for me. These aren't just observations, they are seeds, each dropped into the fertile soil of mind. And the soil doesn't care what you plant, it only knows how to grow. The ancients knew this. They understood that sound carries force, that vibration shapes substance. But the New Thought teachers brought it closer. They showed us how consciousness and speech are two halves of one act. The silent belief and the spoken word are twins. When you speak, you cast thought into form. You set invisible principles into visible play. This is why every spiritual teacher who understood power emphasized the spoken word, not idle chatter, but the prayer declared in faith, not hoping, not begging, but declaring. There is no power in saying please to the universe. There is power in saying it is so. Because when you speak with conviction, not performance, but inner knowing, you align with the way the creative law functions. The law does not respond to emotion alone, nor to ritual, nor even to need. It responds to belief made audible. You do not need perfect diction. You need a definite mental stance. The word only works when you're standing in it, not peeking in to see if it's safe. You don't wait for the outer to approve the inner. You start from the truth and let the outer conditions catch up. So now you must ask yourself, not with anxiety, but with holy seriousness, what am I speaking into the world every day without even realizing it? What do I declare with my tone, my stories, my repeated conclusions about life? Are you speaking lifer, reliving wounds? Are you declaring orderer, recycling fear? This is not about positive thinking. This is about spiritual authorship. When you speak the word, you are not dressing up your circumstances in pretty language. You are claiming dominion over the unseen forces behind them. The power lies in the recognition that the word is creative law in motion. It is not superstition, it is structure. When you align your speech with a truth higher than circumstance, you're not denying reality, you're upgrading it. You're planting a seed whose fruit may take time to emerge, but which has no choice but to grow. This requires practice. It requires integrity. You cannot speak abundance and brood on lack. You cannot affirm healing and rehearse disease. You cannot declare love and live in resentment. Your word is only as powerful as your alignment with it. And here's what most forget. The word is also silent. It's what you mutter under your breath when no one is listening. It's the conclusions you draw in traffic, in tension, in boredom. All of that speaks. All of it creates. But the good news, the liberating, life-altering, truth is this. You can choose again. In every moment, you can choose what you speak. You can interrupt an old declaration and install a new one. You can say, no more. You can say, from this moment forward, I speak the word of clarity, peace, strength, and completion. And when you say it not just in language but in being, something shifts. Not instantly perhaps, but irreversibly. The invisible gears begin to turn. The universe begins, silently and without exception, to take you at your word. You are never waiting for power. Power is waiting on you. The word is the key. Speak it, stand in it, and do not waver. Every condition in your life, every visible outcome, every hidden emotion, every recurring pattern was first shaped in the unseen world of thought. Before anything took form, it existed as consciousness. And this is not a poetic metaphor. It is a structural law. Thought is the mold through which your reality must pass. Change the mold, and the form must follow. This is where the power begins to get practical. You may look at a situation, your finances, your health, your relationships, and think, this is just how it is. But that's not true. It's how it has been. And what it has been was shaped by what you've been consistently thinking, especially the thoughts you didn't think were powerful, especially the thoughts you justified as realistic. See, most people live in reverse. They see results, then think about those results, then react to those thoughts, which reinforces the results. It's a loophole that keeps your life echoing the same messages again and again. But the truth is, the cause is always upstream. The thought comes before the condition, always. If you want transformation, not just minor change, you must stop focusing on the clay and start focusing on the mold. You must become conscious of what you've been thinking about life, about others, and most critically, about yourself. Because those thoughts are the blueprints. This is not about shame. It's about authorship. You've inherited many molds, from childhood, from culture, from trauma, from repetition. But the moment you become conscious of them, the moment you choose to see, you also gain the power to reshape them. You don't have to fix your whole mind today, but you do need to become aware of what's in the mold. What are you rehearsing in your head every morning? What do you expect when you check your bank account, answer the phone, walk into work? Those expectations aren't passive, they are pre-creative forces. If you say, things never work out for me, even silently, that thought becomes a mold. Life begins to pour itself into it, not because life is cruel, but because life is obedient. The universal mind doesn't select for truth, it selects for belief. So, what happens when you shift the mold? When you begin to construct a new thought pattern, deliberately and with emotional clarity? At first, the outer may not catch up. The old mold may still be hardening. But slowly, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, things begin to bend. Conditions shift. Opportunities arise. People behave differently. Or you behave differently and attract a new kind of mirror. This isn't magic. This is metaphysical cause and effect. And it is governed by your dominant thought, not just the occasional affirmation, but the steady climate of your mind. That's why casual wishing doesn't work. You can't think, I hope things change in the morning, then spend the rest of the day mentally reinforcing that they won't. The mold must be consistent. And that consistency comes not from obsession but from clarity. The clearer your thought, the sharper the mold. Vague thoughts create vague results. But a focused thought, repeated with sincerity and calm certainty, becomes a channel through which the unseen begins to move. And this is where we reclaim our dignity. Because many have been taught that their minds are chaotic, that they can't control their thoughts, that the world just happens and they must adjust. But the truth is, your thought is sovereign. You can observe it, you can shape it, you can purify it, and when you do, it begins to carry the quality of intent, not habit. You're not being asked to suppress thoughts. You're being invited to direct them, not forcefully, not with tension, but with authority. As you would guide a river into a new course, not with panic, but with presence. Even a single focused thought, if held long enough, begins to cut a new groove in the mind. It starts as a whisper, but with repetition, it becomes the new default. I am secure. I am deeply guided. Things are working in my favor. At first, these might feel like lies. But if you hold them not with desperation, but with knowing, they begin to harden into a new mold. And once the mold is set, form must follow. It is not optional. Life cannot resist the groove it's been given. Just as water obeys gravity, form obeys thought. So today, your task is not to change the world. It is to observe the mold, Catch the invisible patterns, and gently, but with decision, begin to shape them anew. Because the moment you do, the creative law begins again, and it will not stop until the outer world reflects the inner declaration you've dared to believe. Now that you understand thought as the mold, you must come to grips with the substance that hardens that mold into form. That substance is feeling. Feeling is not a side effect of belief, it is the furnace. Without emotional charge, a thought is a blueprint that never leaves the drawing board. But the moment you invest it with feeling especially sustained, congruent feeling, you energize it with the power to take shape. This is why repeating affirmations mechanically rarely produces change. The creative law is not moved by lip service. It is activated by inner vibration. Thought shapes the form, but feeling seals it. Together, they form the spiritual engine that creates every outcome you experience. Now, hear this clearly. Not all emotion qualifies. Random emotional spikes, panic, or guilt won't do. What fuels creation is conviction, the calm, unwavering sense that something is already real, even before your eyes can prove it. When you speak the word, it's not just about saying the right phrases. It's about feeling the rightness of what you say. Not because you've seen it materialize yet, but because your inner sense of its truth is strong enough to sustain belief through appearances. This is why prayers that beg, plead, or plead just in case often yield little change. The emotion behind them is fear not faith. And the law does not reward desperation. It reflects certainty. That certainty doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't require theatrics. It can be soft, still, even gentle, but it must be true. You've felt it before, perhaps in moments where something within you just knew. You couldn't explain why, but you felt it with your entire being. That kind of knowing carries more power than hours of anxious repetition. So how do you reach that place? Not by force, not by fake emotion, but by internal alignment. You must let the thought you affirm be one that feels possible to your deeper self. If you try to affirm something you completely disbelieve, your subconscious will resist it like a foreign invader. But if you stretch just far enough, if you affirm something that feels like a new truth just beyond your current belief, you create a magnetic pull. Say, for instance, you affirm, "I am prosperous," but deep down you feel broke, anxious, and ashamed. That affirmation may not land. But what if you begin with, "I am opening to prosperity," or "I am learning to trust the flow of abundance"? The thought still moves you forward, but now your feeling can get behind it. That's the key. Find the highest thought your feeling can currently support and speak it often. As that feeling builds, you gain access to stronger declarations. And with every step, you expand the bandwidth of belief. Eventually, what once felt impossible becomes familiar, even natural. You no longer try to feel it, it just is. But beware. Your feeling works both ways. If you rehearse fear, rehearse resentment, rehearse limitation, those emotions also charge the mold. You may not call them prayer, but they are. They are unintentional prayers, spoken with passion. And the law doesn't discriminate. So watch what you feel when you speak. Monitor the energy under your declarations. "I am healthy," said with doubt, is not the same as "I am healing," said with calm expectancy. The law responds to inner congruence. This is not about never feeling fear. It's about recognizing it as raw, creative material, not final truth. Use it. Alchemize it. When fear arises, say, "This too is energy. I can give it a new shape." Then turn that intensity toward a higher vision. Even anger, when refined, becomes fuel. Anger says, "This must change." When directed consciously, that force can power transformation. But only when paired with clarity and will. You are not a slave to your emotions. You are their guide. They serve your vision, or they sabotage it. And the difference lies in your willingness to feel on purpose. Practice feeling the outcome you affirm, not in fantasy, but in embodiment. Let your chest expand. Let your breath deepen. Let your posture change. These are not tricks. They are signals to the creative mind that you are no longer asking, you are becoming. And the moment you become the person who believes, feels, and speaks as if the outcome is done, you collapse the delay between cause and effect. No outer effort can replace this inner alignment. No external action can outperform a clear mold, charged with emotional congruence. When your thought and your feelings say the same thing, the word becomes flesh. So speak your truth, but feel it too, and life will rise to match. The universal law of mind does not think for you. It does not reason. It does not weigh the merits of your desires, assess your past, or ask whether you're ready. It simply reflects. It mirrors back to you the sum total of your thought and feeling, your conscious and unconscious beliefs without judgment, delay, or partiality. This is one of the most liberating and confronting truths you'll ever hear. The law doesn't care what you want. It only cares what you believe. That can sting, because many of us have been taught that wanting something intensely enough should be enough. That if we're a good person, if we try hard, if we ask sincerely, something or someone will reward our effort. But that's not how spiritual law operates. The creative mind is mechanical in its obedience. Not cold, not cruel, just exact. Like gravity, it works the same for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're joyful or bitter, informed or ignorant, confident or uncertain. The law reflects your dominant mental atmosphere. It is impartial because it is precise. You can no more beg it than beg a mirror to show you a different reflection. If you want a new image, you must change what's being presented to it. This is why the law is not personal, but it is intimate. It is always with you, responding second by second to what you accept as true. It takes your word, especially your emotional word, as instruction. It does not weigh whether that instruction will serve your highest good. It simply acts. And once you grasp this, truly grasp it, you will stop praying as though God were a vending machine. You will stop pleading and start creating. You'll shift from, "Why won't the universe give me what I asked for?" to, "What am I consistently assuming to be real?" Because that's what the law listens to. Assumption, not hope. Not occasional declarations, but sustained inner knowing, even if unconscious. This is why people often manifest what they fear, or what they just knew was going to happen, because they've rehearsed it internally with such intensity that the law has no choice but to conform. You can't trick it. You can't appease it with words while contradicting it with your feelings. The law is not confused. It's not moved by what you say you want. It's moved by what you expect. And this is the key to understanding why results often lag behind effort. You may be doing the right things, externally speaking affirmations, visualizing outcomes, making vision boards. But if deep inside, you still assume failure, still mentally brace for disappointment, still harbor resentment, or doubt, that is what the law registers. This is not to punish you. It is to wake you up. Because the moment you realize the law is reliable, not emotional, you gain the power to redirect your energy. You stop interpreting delays as personal rejection and start reading them as signs of internal contradiction. You are not being ignored. You are being obeyed down to the finest detail of your mental climate. So, if the law responds, not reasons, what does that mean for you practically? It means you must become clearer than your contradictions. You cannot hold two opposing ideas and expect one to dominate. "I am abundant," and "there's never enough," cannot share the same mental space without neutralizing each other. The law will reflect whichever you feed, with more consistency and emotional charge. This is why you must cultivate single-mindedness, not narrowness, not inflexibility, but unity of belief. You must train your mind to dwell in the feeling of truth, not bounce between fear and faith like a pendulum. This is not easy, but it is essential. Fortunately, you are not alone in this work. The same law that reflects is also the law that supports. Once you redirect your belief even slightly, the law begins to move with you. Momentum builds. Pattern shift. And your world starts to soften around the edges of what you thought was unchangeable. But do not fall asleep again. The law keeps listening. It doesn't stop when you say amen. It doesn't pause until Monday morning. It is always registering your dominant tone, your mental stance, your felt truth. So, take your place as a deliberate speaker of the word. No longer toss casual thoughts into the creative mind and wonder why chaos grows. Begin to mean what you think. Begin to feel what you want. Begin to expect what you declare. Because once your message is consistent, the law will have no choice, it will reflect you back to yourself with breathtaking precision. There is a hidden enemy within the spiritual seeker's journey. It's not fear or ignorance or even past conditioning. Those can all be met with truth and transformed. No, the deeper enemy, more subtle saboteurus, divided desire. Divided desire happens when you say you want something, but simultaneously resist it. When you declare a goal with your words, but contradict it in your posture, your tone, your assumptions. It is the spiritual equivalent of pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. You may move a little, you may stir up smoke, but mostly, you just burn out. And the worst part? You often don't know you're doing it. On the surface, you sound aligned. You're praying for healing. You're visualizing abundance. You're affirming love. But underneath, there's another current running quiet but steady. Will this really work? What if I fail again? I'm not sure I deserve it. That current speaks louder than your surface effort, because it speaks more often. The creative law doesn't measure your loudest moment. It measures your dominant frequency. It tallies the net result of your mental atmosphere. And when your energy is split, your results reflect that split. Half-formed, inconsistent, delayed. Not because the universe is blocking you, but because you're sending mixed instructions. This is why prayers often go unanswered. Not because they're unheard, but because the belief behind them is divided. You can't say, "I trust," while rehearsing doubt. You can't affirm peace while preparing for war. The law does not take sides, it takes shape. You may not be aware of your inner contradictions at first. They hide beneath habits. They wear the mask of logic. You might tell yourself you're just being realistic. But realism is often just fear with good PR. To catch your divided desires, you have to become a witness to your own inner language. Not just what you say aloud, but what you repeat internally. Watch how quickly your mind adds disclaimers to your affirmations. I am whole. Well, mostly. I am abundant, if this works out. Each of those hesitations chips away at the power of your word. But this is not about shaming yourself for doubt. It's about owning your clarity. When you detect a contradiction, don't suppress it. Meet it. Ask it, what are you afraid of? Often, the resistance is trying to protect you. It's learned that change is painful, or risky, or unsafe. Your job is to gently retrain it, to say, "Thank you, but we're choosing a new direction now." Because clarity isn't just about wanting something, it's about committing to it. Not in obsession, not in tension, but in decision, a quiet, clean inner yes. When that yes takes root, the energy begins to unify. Your thoughts, your feelings, your body, your actions, they begin to speak the same language. And when they do, the law listens. You've likely felt this before. Maybe you didn't name it, but you've had moments where you were fully aligned, where you weren't hoping, it was just done in your heart. And sure enough, things moved quickly. People showed up. Events synchronized. Doors opened. Why? Because the signal you sent was unbroken. This is what we aim to practice, not perfection, but unity. A unified desire, spoken with a unified word, charged by a unified feeling. That combination is unstoppable. Now, here's the challenge. The world will tempt you to divide again. You'll see appearances that contradict your new direction. Old habits will knock. Memories will rise. And your mind will want to hedge, to say, well, maybe, or let's wait and see. That's the moment you must stand firm. You must return to your word and say, I've already chosen, not with arrogance, but with authority. Because the universe cannot override your indecision. It cannot bless what you keep doubting. It cannot multiply what you keep withholding. You must pick your side not once, but every day. And if you do waver, and you will, At times there is grace. Not grace that ignores the law, but grace that invites you to realign. You can always return to clarity. You can always reset the mold. The moment you bring your heart, your thought, and your word into harmony again, the law picks up where it left off. Divided desire does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. But now you know better, and knowing better is where your power begins. So choose, speak, feel, align, and let your whole being say the same thing. Because when it does, the law has no choice but to echo your certainty. True prayer is not petition. It is not the act of reaching out to a distant power and hoping it will respond kindly. It is not a ritual to be memorized or a formula to be performed. True prayer is identification. It is the conscious act of aligning your inner being with the reality you wish to see expressed. Not asking for it, not waiting for it, but declaring it as already real within you. This is the great reverse alone that Emmet Fox, Neville Goddard, and others repeated in countless ways. Prayer is not about convincing the universe. It is about remembering who you are. It is not a transaction. It is a transformation of your state of mind, your inner stance, your felt identity. You are not a beggar at the gates of divine favor. You are a spiritual being, endowed with the creative capacity to think, feel, and choose. Your thoughts are seeds. Your emotions are water. Your identity is the root, and prayer is the act of stepping into the finished form of what you seek right now. But this can only happen when you stop asking and start identifying. You say, I am peace, not give me peace. You say, I am already supplied, not please send money. You say, I am whole, not I wish I could be healed. And you don't just say these things, you become them. You speak them from a place of internal recognition. You look into the mirror of mind and see yourself not as the one lacking, but as the one expressing the truth. This is what it means to pray believing you have received. It means you step into the vibration of already having, not to fake it, not to play pretend, but to bring your awareness up to the level of truth that always existed beyond appearance. This is difficult for the ego. The ego wants to cling to the evidence of the senses. It wants to justify its fear, explain its lack, defend its pain. But spiritual truth is not accessed by ego, is claimed by the higher self. And that self does not negotiate with conditions. It speaks the word because it knows what is real. When you pray in this way, you are not ignoring your situation, you are overriding it. You are choosing to relate to the eternal pattern, not the temporary appearance. You are saying, this is the truth of me, and I will act from it, speak from it, and live from it even before the world agrees. And that's the key. True prayer isn't reactive, it's creative. You don't wait for results to believe. You believe, and then the results follow. This is why so many people give up on affirmative prayer too early. They think if nothing changes in 24 hours, the method must be broken. But what's actually broken is the habit of identity. If you shift into identification once, then return to your old story 1,000 times, the law obeys the dominant vibration. You must dwell in the answer, not visit it, not flirt with it. Live there. And yes, this takes discipline. But it's not the discipline of effort, it's the discipline of choice. You don't force identity, you select it. And the moment you do, the creative law gets to work. It begins assembling circumstances, moving people, altering patterns not by magic, but by response to your new self-concept. Think of it like changing the frequency on a radio. The station you want has always been broadcasting, but until you match its frequency, you can't hear it. The moment you tune in, it becomes clear. The signal was never far away. You were just out of sync. Your desired outcome, health, abundance, love, claritias, already finished in the mind of God, the universal intelligence. It is done. It is whole. And your job is not to manufacture it, but to sync with it. That syncing is what we call prayer. And it's not always easy. You may be surrounded by appearances that scream the opposite of your truth. You may face doubt from within and without. But your strength lies in staying rooted, in choosing to identify with the truth, regardless of appearances. Because appearances change, but the truth you speak from does not. This is why silent prayer can be just as powerful sometimes, more so than words spoken aloud. Because when your entire inner being aligns with the outcome, you are speaking the word without even moving your lips. You are living the answer. And here's the paradox. Once you live from the answer, you often no longer feel the desperate need for it to show up. Why? Because your nervous system has already claimed it. You're no longer chasing. You're embodying. And that inner embodiment collapses delay. In that state, even if the condition hasn't shifted yet, you are already free, already whole, already in the flow of what is true. And from that place, outer change becomes inevitable. So, the next time you pray, don't reach outward. Turn inward. Ask not, will this happen? But, who must I be to already live this? Then become that, and speak from that. Because when you do, you're no longer wishing for truth. You're being it. And that's when the universe moves. You may speak affirmations daily. You may read spiritual texts, visualize outcomes, and speak the word with intention. But if, between those moments, you unknowingly speak words of limitation, sarcasm, worry, or defeat, you are issuing counter-instructions to the very law you seek to work with. This is the invisible drag on your progress, the denials that disempower. Not denials in the metaphysical sense, those are conscious tools to dissolve false beliefs, but unconscious denials, the kind you don't even notice. The way you say, I can't afford that. The way you joke, just my luck. The way you sigh and mutter, it's always something. You think these words are harmless, but they are miniature decrees, and the law listens. The universal mind doesn't recognize humor, sarcasm, or emotional exhaustion as disclaimers. It only recognizes content and tone. And when you speak from frustration, self-deprecation, or fear even casually, you're sowing seeds of agreement with the very things you're trying to transcend. This is why Emmet Fox warned against idle words, not because the universe is touchy, but because it is precise. Every word, especially those repeated with emotion, becomes part of the creative current. Now, this isn't about living in fear of your speech. It's about becoming conscious. It's about realizing that spiritual power is not something you turn on and off like a faucet. It's always on, always listening, always shaping. So you must ask yourself, what are the background loops of language running through your day? What do you say about yourself, about money, about relationships, about the world? Not just when you're meditating or reading, but when you're late for a meeting, when the bill comes due, when you're tired, hungry, or alone. Because that's when the true affirmations rise. Not the ones you plan, but the ones you habitually speak. Do you say, I never catch a break? That figures. Of course this would happen to me. These may seem like throwaway lines, but they reveal the subconscious identity still operating beneath your conscious desire. And unless that identity is challenged, it prevails. This is why the spiritual path is not a part-time practice. It's a lifestyle of awareness, not hypervigilance, not perfectionism, but steady attentiveness to the tone of your own voice. Because every time you speak, you are broadcasting identity. You must begin to catch these subtle denials not with shame, but with curiosity. Replace, I always mess this up with, this is new for me, and I'm learning. Replace, I'm just unlucky, with, my timing is aligning perfectly. Replace, I'll never afford that, with, that's becoming accessible to me. At first, it may feel forced. Your old phrases may still try to slip through. That's natural. You've rehearsed them for years. But each time you interrupt the old script and speak the new word, you chip away at the false mold. You carve out a new groove in consciousness. And soon, the new pattern becomes more natural than the old one ever was. Remember, the law doesn't need your drama. It needs your clarity. You don't need to shout affirmations louder than your fear. You simply need to stop agreeing with the fear. Stop giving it airtime. Stop decorating it with stories. Stop repeating it as if it were wisdom. It is not. Fear may visit. Let it pass. But don't serve it tea and quote it at dinner, because the more you speak from it, the more the law must reflect it. This also applies to how you speak about others. Gossip, criticism, labeling, they may feel justified in the moment, but they reinforce a worldview of separation and limitation. When you speak of another as incapable, broken, or lost, you affirm a vision of reality that ultimately reflects back on you, not because of moral judgment, but because you cannot direct energy outward without it touching your own mold. So speak of others the way you wish to be spoken of. Speak of life the way you want it to be. Speak of the future as if it were being built by your words, because it is. You don't need to be flawless, but you do need to be deliberate. Let every phrase that leaves your mouth become a tool of construction. Let your word become sanctuary, not just in meditation, but in traffic, in waiting rooms, in daily chatter. Because when your word is whole, your world begins to follow suit. The denials that disempower are subtle, but so is light, so is healing, so is the still, small voice of truth. Catch the old story before it spills. Replace it not with hype, but with alignment. Not with fantasy, but with grounded knowing. Every time you do, you reclaim a little more territory from the unconscious past, and step more fully into the truth that has always been waiting for you to speak it. There comes a point in your spiritual unfolding when you must no longer treat your words as casual instruments. You must recognize them for what they truly are: tools of construction, power, tools of consciousness that shape the very walls of your inner and outer reality. This is the moment you commit, fully and unapologetically, to speaking only what builds. To do this, you must first slow down enough to hear yourself. Not just the obvious statements, but the quiet turns of phrase, the reactive expressions, the automatic replies that slip out when you're tired or frustrated. These are the bricks of your mental house. Every phrase is a beam. Every story you repeat is a supporting wall. The question is, are you building a temple or a cage? Once you begin to observe this, you can't unsee it. You'll hear how often people speak about what they don't want, how often they repeat old defeats, preempt new failures, or lace every hope with a sigh of doubt. Not maliciously, not even consciously, just habitually. But that's the thing about the word. It doesn't wait for conscious permission. It works through whatever is said with belief, whatever is said often, whatever is said with feeling. You must reclaim your speech not through censorship, but through consecration. You are not being asked to silence yourself. You're being called to honor your voice, to treat it as sacred. To understand that when you say something with emotional conviction, you're not just describing reality, you're commanding it. So begin here. Eliminate careless repetition of limitation. Phrases like, "I'm terrible at this," "that never works," "that's just the way it is." These may seem harmless, but each one carries the seed of permanence. Each one invites the law to say, "So be it." Instead, speak in a way that leaves the door open for change. "I'm still learning. This is shifting. I'm open to a better way." Even if you can't say, "I love this," you can say, "I'm learning to accept this." That shift alone moves you from passive resignation to creative participation. Guarding your word does not mean retreating into silence. It means stepping into responsibility, not the heavy, anxious kind, but the kind that says, "I understand what I'm working with, and I will treat it with the care it deserves." And when you speak, do so with direction, not to impress, not to defend, but to build. Build clarity. Build courage. Build peace. Use your words to construct bridges between what is and what can be. Use them to call forth the unseen. Use them to signal to your subconscious that a new template is in place. This also means practicing verbal discipline during tension. That moment when frustration peaks, when fear rises, when the old impulse wants to blurt out, "I can't take this." Pause. Breathe. Interrupt the old pattern. Choose again. Speak only what you want to be strengthened. This doesn't mean pretending nothing's wrong. It means refusing to glorify the problem. You can name a challenge without reinforcing its permanence. You can express a feeling without scripting your future with it. Say, I'm moving through something, and I know clarity is coming. Say, this is hard right now, but I am finding my footing. These are not evasions. They are declarations of sovereignty. You are not denying the storm. You are anchoring yourself in a deeper truth while it passes. Even in ordinary conversation, you can begin to insert life. Speak well of your future. Speak kindly of your past. Speak with faith about your body, your finances, your work, your relationships. Speak as if your words were painting the next chapter of your story, because they are. And yes, this takes practice. You will stumble. You will catch yourself mid-sentence and want to backtrack. That's okay. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. Each time you catch the old script and rewrite it even mid-thought, you are shifting momentum. Over time, your language will become lighter, cleaner, stronger, and your outer world will begin to reflect this inner tone. Because here's what most don't realize. The world doesn't just respond to your intentions. It responds to your consistency. And nothing makes you consistent like watching your word. Not obsessively, but reverently. Your speech becomes your signature. Let it be one of power, not passivity. Let it reflect your vision, not your fears. Let it build the house you want to live in. Speak only what builds, and what you build will bless you. There comes a subtle yet monumental shift in the practice of affirmative prayer, and it marks the turning point between spiritual theory and spiritual power. That shift is this. You stop asking for your desire, and you begin acting from it. You no longer approach life as one hoping to receive, you begin to live in the answer, as though it were already yours. This is not a mindset trick. It is a metaphysical position. It is the decision to mentally and emotionally dwell in the state where your prayer has already been fulfilled. Even when the outer hasn't yet caught up. Especially then. To live in the answer is to assume the energy of completion, not from delusion, but from spiritual law. Because what you assume with feeling and persistence, the law must externalize. It has no choice. The only variable is how long you're willing to remain faithful to that state. Let's be clear. This is not acting as if, which implies pretending. This is acting from the identity of someone who already possesses the health, clarity, relationship, or prosperity you once thought was over there. Now, it's here. It's you. And your job is to begin thinking, feeling, speaking, and choosing from that place. This changes everything. When you're living in the answer, you stop looking to the outer world for proof. You stop checking your bank account for reassurance. You stop scanning your body for symptoms. You stop chasing validation from others. Not because you don't care, but because you know the outer is already changing, even if it hasn't yet arrived in visible form. And that's the rub. Most people break the mold too early. They affirm a truth, then look around. Nothing's changed. So they shift back into doubt, anxiety, or analysis. And that's like pulling up a seed to see if it's growing. The soil is faithful, but it cannot deliver fruit while the seed is being tampered with every day. Living in the answer means your inner climate no longer waits for outer change. You begin to embody the feeling of, it is done, and everything about you begins to reflect that certainty. Your speech becomes calmer. Your decisions become clearer. You no longer move from lack, but from purpose. You no longer pray with desperation, but with gratitude. You walk through your day with the quiet dignity of someone who knows who they are and where they're going even if no one else sees it yet. This is not ego. This is alignment. Now, this state must be nurtured. You'll be tempted to drift back into old patterns, especially when conditions contradict your declaration, especially when people question your confidence. But that's exactly when you must remain, not to prove anything, but because you understand that the law is at work. This is where spiritual maturity comes in. Can you remain loyal to the answer, even while the world is still echoing the question? Can you keep your tone steady when the delay stretches longer than you hoped? Can you act with integrity to your vision, even when the payoff isn't visible yet? These moments define the gap between surface spirituality and real embodiment. Neville Goddard called it living in the end. Thomas Troward spoke of thinking from, not of. Ernest Holmes called it mental equivalence. Whatever language you use, the message is the same. The law reflects who you are being, not what you're waiting for. This means you can no longer afford to pray and peek. You can't affirm truth, then turn around and measure its absence. You must move as though the outcome is inevitable, because metaphysically it is. And this is not about recklessness. You're not ignoring the facts. You're interpreting them through a new lens. You say, yes, this may be what I see, but I know what I've planted, and I trust the law to deliver the harvest. Over time, your nervous system will begin to accept the new state as normal. What once felt like a stretch will become your baseline, and the outer world will begin to reorganize its not to give you what you want, but to reflect who you've become. So wake up each day and ask, if I already had this, how would I think? How would I speak? How would I walk into this meeting? How would I treat my body? How would I respond to this challenge? Then live that answer, moment by moment, not perfectly, but faithfully. And if you fall out of it, step back in. Return to the state. Reassume the feeling. Reclaim your mental position. Because the law is still listening, the mold is still active, the answer is still real. Live from I tand, it must come forth. There will be a moment, maybe many, when everything in your outer world will appear to contradict the truth you've affirmed. You've spoken the word. You've aligned your thought and feeling. You've begun to live in the answer. And then a storm hits. Maybe it's a financial crisis, a diagnosis, a betrayal, a door slamming shut. Whatever it is, it feels like the universe didn't just ignore your prayer, challenged it. But here is where the real work begins. Not in the quiet of your meditation, not in the clarity of a perfect morning, but in the middle of the storm. This is when you must choose to stand. Not to force, not to fight, but to remain anchored in your word even when everything screams the opposite. You do not collapse. You do not chase new methods. You do not say, this must not be working. Instead, you say, this is the test of my alignment, and I will not be moved. Because this moment is not proof that your prayer failed. It's often the proof that your consciousness has shifted, so now the old conditions must surface and fall away. The storm isn't the punishment, it's the purge. The final push to break what cannot follow you into your answered prayer. It's easy to believe when skies are clear. It's simple to affirm when everything flows. But when the bank account is low, the body hurts, the feedback is cold, and the wait grows long. That's when faith becomes embodied power. This is the phase of spiritual gestation. The prayer has taken root, the soil has been instructed, but the seed hasn't broken the surface yet. And in that gap, fear creeps in. Doubt whispers. The temptation is to dig it up, to declare defeat, to scramble. Don't meteor. Stand. You're not standing on blind hope. You're standing on law. You're standing on the structure of cause and effect. You're standing on the inner blueprint you've carefully molded through conscious thought, deliberate feeling, and sustained identification. And here's the paradox. When you truly stand, you don't need evidence to feel secure. Your security comes from within. Your posture changes. Your breath steadies. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop trying to fix what is already resolving at a deeper level. This is where spiritual stamina matters. Not hustle, not force. Stamina. The ability to hold the vibration of done without needing constant confirmation. The strength to feel the storm but not become it. This is what it means to walk by inner vision, not outer sight. It doesn't mean you ignore facts. It means you interpret them from a higher dimension of truth. You say, yes, this looks like lack. But I know supply is unfolding. Yes, this feels like setback. But I know realignment is in progress. Yes, this moment is hard, but it is not the final word. And here's the miracle. When you stand, the storm begins to shift. Maybe not instantly, but gradually, the winds die down. The clouds part. Opportunities you couldn't have scripted arise. Solutions you couldn't have forced emerge. And you realize the storm wasn't in your way. It was your initiation. It proved to your subconscious that you no longer worship appearances, that you no longer collapse into fear at the first sign of resistance, that you can hold your shape even in pressure. This kind of spiritual integrity sends a signal not to the universe, but to your own creative power. It tells the law, I am ready, I am stable, I can carry this answered prayer with grace. Because let's be honest, many ask for abundance, but collapse under pressure. Ask for love, but panic in silence. Ask for growth, but resist the fire that purifies the path. Standing doesn't mean being stoic. It means being rooted. It means you feel but don't react. You see but don't judge. You wait not with anxiety, but with expectancy. Even Jesus, in the storm, said, "Peace, be still." And he said it not just to the winds but to the minds of those around him. Because storms outside are easy. It's the inner storms that need the word. So speak to yours and stand. Speak with quiet authority. I know the truth. I know who I am. I know the word I've spoken, and I stand in it now. The storm will pass, and what it tried to shake loose will be revealed for what it was not your undoing, but your clearing. There's a fine but critical line between spiritual knowing and spiritual force, between standing in truth and straining for outcomes, between resting in the answer and trying to control its delivery. That line is called assurance, and it is the mark of true inner mastery. Assurance is not passive. It is not lukewarm optimism or vague trust. It is a steady, unshakable knowing that the thing you have spoken, the word you have declared, is already done in the realm that matters most. Not will be, not might be, but is. But assurance is not willpower. Willpower pushes, it strains, it leans forward in tension, trying to make things happen through sheer intensity. And often the more you push, the more you entangle yourself in the illusion of lack. You start to believe that unless you're grinding mentally or emotionally, you're not doing enough. That's not spiritual power. That's spiritual fatigue masquerading as discipline. Assurance, on the other hand, relaxes into truth. It doesn't need to repeat the word endlessly to feel safe. It has said it once, maybe twice clearly, cleanly, and now it allows the law to move. Not because it's lazy, but because it understands the mechanics. You don't need to remind the soil to grow the seed every hour. You simply plant it, water it, and let the process unfold. You tend to the conditions, but you don't pry open the roots. Likewise, when you've spoken the word from alignment, and you've done the inner work to believe it, your job is not to obsess, it's to trust the unfolding, to remain tuned into the vibration of already done, while letting the specifics be handled by the creative intelligence that orchestrates more variables than you could ever track. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you act from inspiration, not desperation. When you feel guided to move, you move. When you feel led to rest, you rest. Your rhythm is governed by flow, not force. This is the secret of those who seem to effortlessly manifest. It's not that they do nothing, it's that they operate from a place of energetic coherence. Their desire, belief, and emotion all say the same thing. So the law has a clean path to deliver. Rigid will, by contrast, is usually full of contradiction. It declares abundance, but panics over delays. It affirms love, but acts out of fear of rejection. It wants peace, but fights everything that feels uncertain. The vibration is noisy, conflicted, and so the results are, too. You must learn to replace rigidity with radiance. Radiance doesn't push, it shines. It sends a clear signal. This is who I am, this is what I carry, this is what I expect. And the world, being the mirror it is, begins to comply. When you carry assurance, people feel it. You don't need to convince them of your path. You don't need to explain why you're calm. Your presence becomes evidence. Even when challenges arise, and they will, you don't flinch. You observe. You adjust if needed. But you do not panic, because your center is no longer built on outcomes. It is built on identity. And here's the thing. That kind of inner assurance is magnetic. Not just metaphysically, but practically. People respond to it. opportunities find it. Life begins to open where before it resisted, not because you forced it, but because you aligned so clearly that the way became smooth. When you catch yourself pushing, forcing, tensing, pause. Return to the knowing. Ask, am I operating from truth or from fear of loss? If it's fear, recenter. If it's truth, stay the course. Speak your word once and let it echo through your being. You can reinforce it through meditation, through gratitude, through inspired action. But let your inner tone be one of calm expectancy, not nervous control. Because the universe doesn't respond to tension, it responds to alignment. And alignment feels like yes, quiet, steady, full. So relax your grip, keep your posture. Let the outcome come to you not by force, but by frequency. This is not passivity, this is precision. Let assurance be your ground, let radiance be your method. And what is yours cannot help but arrive. There is a signal more powerful than repetition, more magnetic than visualization, more clarifying than mental effort. That signal is gratitude, but not the kind offered out of politeness or obligation, not the kind reserved for things already received. This is spiritual gratitude, the calm, confident thankfulness that arises before the manifestation, not after. It is a quiet declaration to the creative law that says, I already have it, I already am it, I already see the good, even when the senses lag behind. Gratitude in this form is not a virtue, it's a confirmation. When you truly give thanks in advance, you signal that your belief is settled. You are not checking for evidence. You are not asking if it's working. You're not hoping for permission. You are saying, this is mine. I recognize it. I welcome it. And the law, being exact, responds. This is the difference between a wish and a word. A wish says, I'll be grateful when it shows up. A word says, because I have spoken, I now give thanks. That kind of gratitude precedes the harvest, but it also activates it. When you give thanks in the middle of the process, in the waiting, the fog, the uncertainty, you multiply your alignment. Because gratitude is a frequency that assumes fulfillment. It bypasses the intellect and stabilizes the heart. And it has power. Not power to manipulate, but power to solidify your vibration. It tells your body, your mind, and the universe. There is no more need to chase. I am in receiving mode now. This is not spiritual performance. You don't need to force cheerfulness. You don't need to pretend to be high vibe every moment. But you do need to cultivate sincere appreciation for the unseen good already flowing to you. Start simple. Thank the law for hearing you. Thank your higher self for holding the vision. Thank your past self for choosing a new direction. Thank the unseen forces, call them angels, energy, intelligence, or God, for moving on your behalf. The point is not to please a deity. It is to fuse your belief into embodiment. Gratitude does that. It relaxes the nervous system. It dissolves doubt. It clears mental clutter. It replaces the frantic energy of how will it happen with the ease of course it's unfolding. Gratitude also multiplies awareness. The more you give thanks for good, the more good you begin to notice. And as your awareness expands, your vibration rises not from effort, but from resonance. This is why the most effective affirmative prayer ends not with begging, but with thanks. It's not a performance cue, it's a metaphysical stamp that says, this word is sealed. You may still repeat your affirmation in the days ahead, but you no longer do so from longing. You speak now from recognition. There is a massive difference between repeating a truth to force its arrival and declaring it with the smile of one who knows it's already theirs. Gratitude makes that shift happen without words. It is the spiritual equivalent of resting your case. And when you rest your case, you allow the law to proceed without interference. This kind of gratitude may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you were taught to only give thanks for what has physically arrived. But once you taste the power of preemptive appreciation, you will never pray the same way again. It doesn't mean you stop wanting things. It means you collapse the gap between wanting and having by giving thanks as if the answer were already present. Because metaphysically, it is. The moment you spoke the word, the answer began its movement. And though the form may take time to reach you, the essence is already real. Gratitude plugs you back into that essence. It turns your attention away from absence and toward the truth, that what you desire is already known, heard, and in motion. So in moments of doubt, give thanks. When the outer world is silent, give thanks. When nothing seems to be happening, give thanks. Not because you feel obligated, but because you know the machinery is running. You've placed the order. The delivery is en route. The only question is whether you'll be open and attuned enough to receive it fully when it arrives. And gratitude keeps you open. It quiets your resistance. It loosens the grip of control. It brings joy into the waiting, and joy is always a sign that your frequency is on point. So let gratitude not be a reaction but a foundation, a way of being, a tone of trust. Let it become your confirmation. The word has been spoken. The law is responding, and I am already grateful, because that's not optimism. That's authority. What if everything you fear, very appearance of lack, illness, conflict, or limitation, wasn't the final word but simply a passing image? What if it had no more permanence than a shadow on the wall, no more power than a scene in a dream? Would you still let it dictate your truth? Or would you rise, look through it, and speak from a higher law? To break the spell of appearances is not to deny facts, it is to refuse their dominion. It is to recognize that what your senses report is not reality itself, but the outpicturing of past belief. A mirror of consciousness, not a prophecy. Appearances are convincing. They feel solid. Pain feels real. Debt feels final. Silence from someone you love feels like rejection. But these are only reflections, and reflections do not cause themselves. Behind every appearance is an unseen mold, and behind every mold is a belief. Shift the belief, and the mold softens. Shift the mold, and the appearance must eventually change. You cannot break the spell of appearances by fighting them. Resistance only strengthens the illusion. What you fight, you feed. What you fear, you energize. You break the spell by seeing through it. You look directly at the diagnosis, the balance sheet, the empty inbox, and you say not with arrogance, but with clarity, "This is not the whole story." You declare, "This is the result of a past thought, and I no longer think that way." This is not pretending. It's prioritizing truth. You must begin to place spiritual law above sensory data, not recklessly, not blindly, but firmly. Because the moment you give more authority to conditions than to your word, you become hypnotized by the very patterns you're here to break. You must learn to pierce the veil, to look at pain and say, "Healing is underway." To look at lack and say, "Supply is rising." To look at confusion and say, "Clarity is forming now." These aren't lies. They are preconditions to truth becoming visible, and until you hold to them calmly, persistently, peacefully, the truth has no channel to flow through. This is why spiritual vision is not seeing what's already there. It's holding the image of what should be until what shouldn't be dissolves. Manly P. Hall once said that appearances are temporary masks upon eternal principles. The mask may change. It may frighten you, but the principle beneath it is unchanged. You must begin to relate to principle, not pattern. Principle says, all supply is within. Principle says, life seeks expression, not repression. Principle says, what is held in consciousness will move into form. Principle says, love is the only real power. The rest is resistance. When you live from principle, appearances begin to lose their grip, not because they vanish overnight, but because they no longer dictate your state. And that's the key. Your state of mind is your creative medium. If you let appearances disrupt it, they've won. If you keep it steady, you've already shifted the cause and the effect will follow. This doesn't mean you never cry, never doubt, never feel frustration. You are human. But it does mean you don't let those moments define your reality. You don't worship the image, you look beyond it. This is how masters of spiritual practice move through crisis. They don't deny what's happening, but they interpret it through a higher lens. They say, yes, this is present, but it is not final. It is not defining. It is not me. And when they speak that urgently, clearly, repeatedly, the appearance begins to dissolve, maybe slowly, maybe dramatically, but it cannot remain, because it has been unplugged from its source. You cannot control every image that appears before you, but you can choose whether to inhabit it or redeem it. Choose redemption. Choose to see through the mask. Choose to speak from the truth, not from the drama. Because no matter how convincing the picture looks, it is still just a picture, and your word is the brush. Speak with authority. This is not permanent. This is not my final chapter. This is the moment before the shift, and the shift will come, not because you forced it, but because you refuse to fall under the spell. It is perhaps the most piercing truth on the spiritual path and the one we most often avoid. Your world reflects not what you deserve, but what you deeply consent to believe. Not what you say you want. Not what you strive to earn. Not what someone else thinks you're worthy of, but what you have knowingly or unknowingly agreed to within. This is the mirror turning inward. Until now, you may have imagined the law as an external responder, molding your words and feelings into results out there. But the most enduring transformations don't begin at the level of outer results. They begin at the level of identity. Who do you believe yourself to be? And what does that identity silently permit into your experience? The law responds to this not to your surface desires, but to your deepest consent. You can say, I want abundance. But if you still carry the belief that wealth is dangerous, selfish, or unlikely for someone like you, the law must reflect that conflict, not to punish you, but to obey the clearest, most consistent instruction. You can declare, I am loved. But if you inwardly feel unworthy, expect abandonment, or fear intimacy, your relationships will mirror that vibration not because you're broken, but because the mirror is faithful. We all carry beliefs we did not consciously choose, beliefs absorbed from childhood, from trauma, from culture. These beliefs operate like default settings, shaping what we allow, how we respond, what we sabotage, and what we expect to last. But here's the liberating part. Consent can be withdrawn. The moment you recognize that you've been agreeing to lack, to illness, to anxiety, to invisibility, you can interrupt the pattern. You can say, that belief may have lived in me, but it no longer speaks for me. And with every new word, you offer the law a new signature. The outer world doesn't change first. The mirror only changes when you do. And that change begins in still honesty. You must become willing to see yourself clearly, not as a victim of outer forces, but as a creative center of consciousness zone that is always choosing, even in silence. This kind of honesty isn't harsh. It's sacred. It invites you to sit with the patterns in your life, not to judge them, but to trace them back to their root. To ask, where did I agree to this? When did I begin to expect this? What have I been silently allowing? You'll find no monstrous-only old strategies, old protective thoughts, outdated stories, and as you see them, name them, and speak new truth over them, their power dissolves. Because a belief, once exposed, loses its grip. But exposure isn't enough. You must replace the old script with embodied truth. You must begin to see yourself differently, to treat yourself as someone worthy of better, someone ready to receive more, someone no longer ruled by unconscious consent. And then, the mirror begins to shift. People respond to you differently. Circumstances bend, not because you've manipulated the outer world, but because you've updated the signal. Neville Goddard taught that your inner state is the cause of everything, not a thing here and there everything. And until you take responsibility for that, you remain a passenger in your own life. But once you do, once you say, if my world reflects me, then I will reflect something new. You move from reaction to authorship. This is not blame. This is power. You are not responsible for everything that happened to you, but you are responsible for what you choose to carry forward. And the mirror will always obey the choice you've made now. So begin to consent only to what uplifts, only to what aligns, only to what honors your wholeness. Stop nodding along to lack. Stop accepting struggle as normal. Stop describing yourself with limitations inherited from people who didn't know better. The law is listening, and it is ready now to reflect back a new image. But it must come from you, not from your ego, from your deepest yes. Let that yes be loud. Let it be calm. Let it be certain. Then watch the mirror reshape. Now we return not to where we began, but to the truth that was waiting beneath it all. The truth that your word is not merely something you speak, it is something you become, something you live. Something that must move beyond prayer and enter every decision, every tone, every step. To be the Word made flesh is to embody the invisible, to walk through the world carrying your truth not as theory, but as being. You've learned how thought forms the mold, how feeling fuels it, how the law obeys without reasoning. You've stood in storms. You've untangled old denials. You've learned to speak only what builds, to live from the answer, and to pierce the illusion of appearances. Now comes the integration, the moment when all of it moves from concept to identity. This is not a performance. This is not spiritual theater. It's not about memorizing affirmations or playing the part of someone enlightened. It's about allowing the word you've declared to shape your character, quietly, daily, deeply. To be the Word made flesh means that peace is no longer just a mantrate. It becomes how you sit, how you speak to a stranger, how you carry your body in a tense room. Abundance is no longer just a goal, it's how you tip, how you share, how you greet opportunities. Love is no longer a concept, it's how you respond to offense, how you hold space, how you listen. It's easy to speak the word in solitude, but the world needs it informed through your presence, your tone, your integrity. That's when people feel it. That's when the vibration transfers. That's when your life becomes a transmitter of healing, not just for you, but for everyone you meet. You become evidence. You become the living proof of spiritual law in motion, not by forcing, not by preaching, but by being. And you'll know it's working when your old reactions fall away without effort. When you walk into a familiar situation, but no longer collapse into the familiar identity. When you speak from truth, not out of habit, but because truth now lives where the lie once did. Being the Word means you take no spiritual vacations. You don't compartmentalize your power. You bring it with you into traffic, into paperwork, into silence. You let it speak through your presence. And when you falter, and you will, you don't collapse in shame. You realign. You speak the word again. You act on it again. You rise again. Not because you have to, but because you know who you are. The word isn't something you visit on Sundays. It's the fabric of your daily expression. It's how you make decisions. It's how you interpret delay. It's how you stay centered while others spin. When you walk as the Word made flesh, you stop needing to defend your path. You don't argue about the truth, you live it. You don't chase signs, you become one. You become the answered prayer you once begged for. And your life begins to speak without words. Not louder, not grander, but clearer. Your presence says, this is what alignment looks like. This is what calm power feels like. This is what living the answer means. So, as we close, ask not, what should I do next? Ask, who must I now be, fully, consistently, courageously, so that the word I've spoken is no longer a hope, but a presence. Then be that. Let the word become you. Let your life finish the prayer. Let the unseen truth take visible form in your walk, your voice, your decisions, your breath. Be the word, and everything you've spoken shall unfold. Now, as you rest in stillness, let these words settle. You've walked through a deep remembering not just of what prayer is, but of what you are. A vessel of conscious creation, a spiritual being wired to speak, to feel, to choose. You are not waiting on power. Power waits on you, and now you know how to use it. not as force, not as performance, but as alignment. You are the one who molds the clay, the one who names the truth, the one who speaks and holds and lives in the answer until it becomes your new ground. There is nothing missing from you, nothing broken, just patterns that needed awareness, just stories ready to be rewritten. And now, you begin again not from scratch, but from sovereignty. You've learned to think upstream of results, to feel before you see, to act from completion, not toward it. You've reclaimed the word not just as a practice, but as your posture in life. So tonight, as your breath slows, as your mind begins to settle, remember this: you are not a wish. You are a cause. You are not a reaction. You are a decree. You are not hoping for truth. You are living it now. Rest in that. Return to it. Let it hold you. And tomorrow, when you rise, rise from the answer. The world is waiting to reflect what you now carry. And it shall.